I'm assuming that everybody knows that this week the son of the President of the United States was having a trial that I'm pretty sure began last week, and then it concluded, and the verdict came in from the jury that he was guilty on all those counts. And there's general agreement. Two things. One is that given the facts and given the law, the jury did its job right. It's supposed to apply the facts to the law, and it concluded that indeed Hunter Biden had violated the law. It is also generally acknowledged that if Hunter Biden had not been the son of the President of the United States, this whole thing would have been resolved in a very different, less of an ordeal kind of a way. There are different ways of looking at that, but anyway, these cases are seldom brought. So, and then the other element of this is, this has happened at a particular moment in time, such that even though Hunter Biden's having to go through this ordeal, and we don't know how much more ordeal there's going to be, even though that's not really the best way things could have been if America were in ideal condition, nonetheless, in that moment, this trial and his ordeal actually serve a valuable purpose and turn him from a victim as well as a criminal, and he's both of those by the letter of the law, but also turn him into a sacrifice, which is something that can have real value. So here's what I've written. This is not something that's I've regarded as ready for publication, but it'll do for now here. If I were Hunter Biden, I would see my path, my mistakes, my misfortunes, and my suffering as giving me a role that serves my nation. I would see that I'd turned out to be a useful sacrifice at a time of national crisis. My mistakes would be clear. My bad choices exposed me to the law. But it's also my misfortune because legal experts agree that cases like mine are virtually never brought to trial. My case came to trial because I am the son of the President of the United States, and because two aspects of my father's situation combined to condemn me to this fate. First, he stands in the way of Donald Trump's getting what he wants. And second, the rule of law is under attack like never before in this nation's history. And the rule of law is one of those things for which my father has the responsibilities of the presidency. As for the suffering, it has already been an ordeal, and even though the facts of my case wouldn't ordinarily lead to jail time, the same set of forces that led to the anomaly of my being tried might make my sentence likewise harsher than usual. Yet I would embrace my suffering as best I could, because I'd see myself as playing a sacrificial role that serves a meaningful, patriotic purpose. For a long while, it looked like I would just be a casualty of the way my father's Department of Justice continually bent over backwards to prove that it was restoring blind justice's rule of the law. No fear or favor, a restoration of the integrity, that had been sacrificed by Trump's DOJ under William Barr, with his and Trump's targeting Trump's enemies and coming to the aid of Trump's accomplices. Bending over backwards, they kept in place the prosecutor Trump had appointed to go after me. And it was he who decided to bring to trial a case that almost never would be settled, that almost always would be settled more easily and discreetly. For a long while, it looked like my ordeal would achieve nothing, as has been the case with every other case of bending over backwards that this Attorney General has done, such as trying in both the January 6th case and the classified document case to avoid any confrontation with Trump over crimes he'd clearly committed. But by a stroke of great fortune, the timing of my ordeal, my in this case again being Hunter Biden, has made my case a valuable blow against the latest assault on the rule of law by Trump and the Trump party. The rule of law has functioned just as it's supposed to, and the jury did its job right. In my case, given the facts and the law, in convicting Trump of 34 felonies that were committed as part of a scheme to help him win the 2016 presidential election. Not a very good sentence. What I'm saying there is the jury did its job in both cases. In response, Trump and pretty much the whole Republican Party has been screaming about how this travesty of justice and how it's about the weaponization of the Department of Justice against this president's rival, even though the Department of Justice had nothing to do with the New York State trial. How the conviction of Trump marks a disgraceful day in the history of our nation. Lies. In this battle between the truth that the justice system functioned exactly as it should, and the lie that Merrick Garland and my father are using the law to go after the enemy, the opinion of the American people is the battlefield. The lie that told by Trump and his accomplices, that my father, President Joe Biden, has betrayed his oath of office and used the justice to wage political warfare for his own purposes, is directly refuted by my fate. My father could have appointed his own special prosecutor for my case, or intervened later to have the case dropped. But he didn't. My father, the president, could rescue me from the rule of law with a pardon, like Trump did for his accomplices like Paul Manafort and Roger Stone and Mike Flynn. But he has declared that he will not do that. Trump and I both committed crimes and are being held accountable. One side of our politics accepts that, as my father demonstrates by behaving impeccably, even as he watches his only living son pay the price. One side accepts accountability and the rule of law. The other side of our politics sides with the criminal against the rule of law. My ordeal thus serves to expose the lie from Trump and the Trump party about the weaponization of justice. The American people, witnessing the integrity of my father's Department of Justice, can draw the proper conclusions about which side in the upcoming election represents the protection of America's basic values and which side represents its overthrow. Because of the timing of my trial and conviction, because that timing was perfect, I get to serve a sacrificial role. My trial and conviction came immediately on the heels of Trump's criminality being declared by a unanimous jury, and on the heels of the Trump party attacking the legitimacy of the American system of justice with accusation that my conviction disproves. And that's where it stops. And much of what I'm saying here is sort of implied or somewhat said in a variety of places. People have been saying, take a look at the refutation. Here's the president's son, and the president is not showing fear or favor. I do think that that accusation is so ludicrous because the actual defects in Merrick Garland's Department of Justice have been just the opposite. That they, if the crimes that were already well exposed to the whole public from Trump, and it would be suspected from a whole cadre of people who are meeting in the war room the night before the insurrection. If those had been investigated and pursued from the same moment as they pursued the identification, investigation, prosecution of the people who are actually pulling off this attack on Congress, all this would have been almost 2 years ahead of time. And we wouldn't be in the situation where it looks like this trial in Manhattan is the only one that's going to be conducted. Liz Cheney was right. It can't be that we see what we saw on January 6th and then we go to vote 4 years later and the public still hasn't seen a trial about the crimes that are involved with this attempt to overthrow an election. It can't be, but it is. And there are various reasons why it is. It wouldn't be this way if the Supreme Court hadn't become captured by something really the opposite of what the Supreme Court should be. The Supreme Court could easily have had the trial. What the circuit court said was, even if we had to go to the circuit court, was a perfect thing to just let the trial begin. And that was clearly the national interest, but the Supreme Court intervened to give Trump the delay that he wanted. So probably we'll never see that trial conducted before the election, and maybe never if Trump wins. But the other thing that is right there at the beginning there on the Department of Justice's side is that in order to demonstrate that he wasn't politicizing the Department of Justice, he politicized the Department of Justice and didn't treat the crimes from the top like he would if it wasn't if it was any other American citizen be committing those crimes. He bent over backwards, and that wasn't a good way to defend the rule of law. It forfeited with the help of the Supreme Court. It's allowed the criminal to really significantly defeat the rule of law, at least temporarily, and increases the chance that the criminal, and there's no reason to think that these other trials are less likely to result in a conviction than the one in Manhattan. In fact, I would say they are much more likely to than those appeared to be before the trials. But I think they're all very likely. He was Merrick Garland bent over backwards to be unpolitical, and he made a serious mistake of making a decision that was political, and it has political ramifications that the criminal is able to get to Election Day without some of the most serious crimes in American history being presented in a court of law where facts and truth always have the advantage, as opposed to our politics where the lie has been very successful. And where we've got a prodigious liar leading one of America's two main political parties and advertising quite openly that when he gets a hold of the powers of the presidency again, there's not going to be any pretense of or attempt to have independence of the judiciary. There are plans being drawn up that can be found. This Project 2025 or whatever it's called. This is going to be a weaponized Department of Justice. It's not the American system. It is the overthrow of the rule of law. And it's gotten advantages because, for one thing, this president and his attorney general, particularly the attorney general, have been so scrupulous about not committing any of this, not only not committing this kinds of sins that Bill Barr's Justice Department committed, but not giving anybody any basis whatever to believe that they had committed any of those sins of weaponization. And every time that liberal America has bent over backwards, it's just given an advantage to the forces that are attacking the rule of law. Barack Obama said he wasn't going to prosecute any of the crimes. And there were a few serious ones in the W presidency leading up to Obama's taking office, and swearing to see that the laws are faithfully upheld. But he says we're going to look backward and look forward instead of look backward. All prosecutions require looking backward. He didn't want people on the right who are so already by 2009 kind of rabid from thinking that he was doing something political as opposed to keeping his oath in office. So he betrayed his oath of office, Obama did in 2009, saying he wasn't going to make sure that the laws were faithfully enforced when there was evidence of crimes. And he got nothing for it. He didn't want the right wing to think that he was a bad guy. They end up thinking 20% of them think he's the Antichrist. Everything gets in order to avoid the right getting more and more angry and upset. Garland bends over backwards not to, and everybody else trying to get these documents back. For example, in Florida, they're not dealing with Trump the way any other citizen would have been dealt with. One expert after another says that any other American would be in jail if they did this at various points along the way. But eventually they have an FBI raid. Not raid, but they get a search warrant. Way late. And then and then we got another corrupt judge giving him the delays that he needs. You don't get rewarded for bending over backwards with an opponent like this. Garland was doing the opposite of what he's accused of, yet he's still accused of it. And most of the Republican base, I think, believes it. So there's nothing gained. Hunter Biden's prosecution, I think, was in danger, as I have it in this piece, of being just something that didn't get any attention. But because it comes at this very special moment when the Republican Party is making these blatant, disgraceful assaults on the rule of law, like no political party has ever done, even when they haven't liked the verdict, it's very timely. And if I were in his shoes, I would try to celebrate that, even though I'm sure it's no fun to go through what he's gone through.